At a glittering corporate birthday party, a 7-year-old boy stuns the room when he runs to his black nanny and calls her mommy in front of his wealthy white family and their elite guests. Gasps follow. Tension crackles. But just as the nanny is about to be humiliated and dismissed, a mysterious stranger walks in with one sentence that stops everything cold. I think it's time someone told the truth. What follows is a storm of secrets, stolen motherhood, corporate betrayal, and one woman's fight to reclaim her son, her voice, and her power. This is a story of pain, power, and poetic justice. The Lexington estate gleamed with excess. Waiters in black tuxedos carried gold-rimmed trays of champagne past towering floral arrangements. The air was thick with perfume, laughter, and power. The kind of celebration where CEOs toasted to mergers and their wives gossiped about vacation, homes in Monaco. Charles Everly, the host and CEO of Everly Holdings, beamed in the center of it all, surrounded by partners, board members, and politicians. His wife, Evelyn, moved through the crowd with the grace of someone born to wealth. No one noticed the small boy slipping between guests until he made himself heard. "Mommy!" Heads turned. Conversations stopped. Glasses froze mid-air. Little Evan, in his tiny navy blazer and dress shoes, had just sprinted across the ballroom, straight into the arms of Celeste Dawes, the black woman who had been quietly arranging cupcakes near the buffet. The silence that followed was suffocating. Celeste crouched instinctively, arms open, as Evan flung himself into her embrace. Her heart pounded in her chest. She heard the sharp intake of breath from guests. She saw the judgment in their eyes, and then Evelyn's voice sliced through the moment like a knife. "He means Nanny, of course. That's not his mother." She walked over and yanked Evan away. The boy blinked, confused, lips trembling. "But she is..." Celeste rose slowly, spine straight. The humiliation washed over her like cold water. She had been a fixture in that home for years. She had raised Evan, his late-night fevers, his first steps, his nightmares. She was his comfort, his constant. And now she was being corrected. Charles, ever the image of diplomacy, gave an awkward laugh. "Kids say the darndest things, huh?" The guests chuckled, nervously. The party resumed, but something had shifted. Then, from the far hallway, a door creaked open. A man stepped into the room. He wore a weathered trench coat, and his presence was jarringly out of place among the suits and pearls. He didn't belong here, but he looked like he didn't care. He scanned the crowd. His gaze landed on Celeste, and then, to everyone's confusion, he said aloud, "I think it's time someone told the truth." The music stopped for real this time. All eyes turned to him. Celeste's hands began to shake. The man stepped forward, slow and deliberate, as if unbothered by the stares slicing into him from every angle. Evelyn bristled, clutching her son's hand. "Excuse me? Who are you? And what do you think you're doing? This is a private event." He ignored her. His eyes stayed fixed on Celeste, and when he finally spoke again, his voice was calm, but carried weight. "My name is Marcus Dawes. I knew your father, Charles. Before you built your glass towers, before you had security guards shielding your conscience." Charles flinched. "That's not possible. My father died 10 years ago." "Yes," Marcus nodded. "But before he did, he told me everything you asked him to bury." Celeste's breath caught in her throat. Marcus's voice. It sounded like a name she'd once heard whispered through hospital walls, a name she'd tried to forget. "You don't belong here," Evelyn said, stepping in front of her husband. Marcus raised an envelope. "This says otherwise." He turned to Celeste. "It's for you." Her fingers trembled as she reached out, but didn't take it. "Why now?" "Because the lie has gone on long enough," Marcus said, "and because he's calling you mommy for a reason." Evan was tucked behind Evelyn, but his eyes locked on Celeste, silently pleading. Marcus continued, "You never stopped being his mother. They just never let you know." Charles's face drained of color. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I do," Marcus snapped. "And so does your lawyer." Gasps. Murmurs spread through the guests like wildfire. From the back, an older man stood, distinguished, calm. Celeste recognized him. Graydon Pierce, the Everly family's attorney. He cleared his throat. Mr. Dawes came to me 2 weeks ago. I didn't believe a word until I pulled the hospital records myself. Charles barked. Pierce, that's privileged information. Not when the child in question was taken under false pretenses. Celeste's knees nearly gave out. Evan peeked out from behind Evelyn. She's my mommy. I told you. And then, piercing through the tension, Marcus added one more chilling line. Charles, you forged a death certificate. Want me to tell them what else you forged? The room exploded in panic and whispers. Celeste stared at the envelope. She finally took it, and her fingers burned as she opened it. Celeste's ears rang. The air in the ballroom had shifted, thick with something sour, disbelief, fear, rage. She could barely breathe. Marcus stood unmoved, the envelope still warm from Celeste's trembling fingers. Before she could open it, another voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. I believe I can clarify what's happening. All eyes turned. Graydon Pierce, the family's longtime lawyer, stood tall in his navy suit at the edge of the room. He adjusted his cufflinks slowly, as if he hadn't just dropped a social bomb into the Everly Gala. I was contacted by Mr. Dawes, he said, nodding to Marcus. Initially, I dismissed his claims. The idea that the Everlys, your family, could be involved in something so grotesque seemed absurd. Charles stiffened. Graydon, not here. Pierce held up a hand. But then I reviewed the documents, hospital logs, medical files, birth certificates. Celeste stared at him. Birth certificates? Pierce met her gaze with a strange sadness. Yours and Evan's. He opened his briefcase and slid 2 crisp papers onto a marble table. One, a birth certificate. The other, a notarized affidavit. According to this, he said, his voice steady, Evan Everly's biological mother is Celeste Dawes. The father is Charles Everly. The room collectively gasped. A glass fell and shattered, but no one turned. Everyone stared at Celeste, once just a nanny, now suddenly the epicenter of a corporate earthquake. Evelyn's jaw dropped. That's a lie. I was in the delivery room. I held him first. You held someone else's child, Marcus said flatly. Celeste staggered. No, I was told my son had died, stillborn. Charles turned ghost white. Pierce cleared his throat again. The records show a highly irregular payment made to a now-defunct clinic. The attending physician disappeared shortly after. Celeste gripped the back of a chair. Her knees buckled. I was 19, she whispered, alone, and then they said he died. I held nothing. They said it was too late. Marcus stepped forward. Because they took him from you. Celeste looked at Charles, betrayal burning into her voice. You told me he was dead. You let me believe it. Then hired me to raise him like I was some stranger. Charles opened his mouth, but no words came. Pierce added, there's one more envelope. For Evelyn. The crowd turned as Evelyn tore it open with trembling hands. Inside was a single photograph, grainy but unmistakable. A younger Evelyn, standing outside the clinic that delivered Evan. Dated 2 days after Celeste's stillbirth. She paled. This doesn't mean anything. Marcus stepped closer, voice low. You knew. You watched. You participated. The room was silent, and in that silence, Evan's small voice rose. She is my mommy. I told you. Celeste wept openly. Pierce looked around. This is far from over. Celeste stared down at the photo Evelyn now held, evidence of betrayal inked in shadows and time. Her fingers twitched. Her chest heaved. But she wasn't crying anymore. She was burning. You took everything from me, she said, her voice like broken glass. My body bore that boy. I loved him before I ever saw his face, and you... She turned to Evelyn, trembling. You stole that moment? You robbed me of hearing him cry, of naming him, of holding him to my chest. Evelyn's lip quivered. You don't understand what I went through. I couldn't have children. Charles told me. He said you were just a kid. You had no future. He said it would be better this way. Celeste stepped forward. Better for who? For a woman who couldn't carry her own child? Or for a man too cowardly to raise a son with a black woman in public? Gasps rippled through the guests. I fed him, Celeste continued, bathed him, prayed over his fevered body while you hosted fundraisers. He called me mommy because I was the one who showed up for him, and you were ashamed of that love. Charles finally spoke, voice hoarse. I didn't want to hurt you. You were just young, poor, alone. It was easier. No, she snapped. You mean it was easier to bury the truth than face the shame of a black woman being the mother of your heir? The room was deadly still. Then Celeste turned to the crowd. Her voice trembled, but every word struck like thunder. You all looked away when he called me mommy, like it was a joke, a mistake. I saw the smiles fade, the eyes narrow, because in this room, a black woman can raise your children, clean your house, polish your crystal, but she's not supposed to belong. No one dared speak. And yet, she continued, he chose me. My son chose me. A single slow clap echoed from the back of the room. Then another, and another. One by one, the crowd shifted. Not all, but enough to shake the walls of the lie that had ruled for years. Just as Celeste began to catch her breath, Marcus stepped beside her. There's one more thing. He pulled out another envelope, thicker this time, bound with an old wax seal. What is it? Celeste asked, voice shaking. Richard Everly's real will. Your son was never supposed to be erased. Gasps. Charles went pale. You found it? Marcus nodded grimly. And the board's going to see it. Celeste stared down at the envelope. Her eyes narrowed. She was no longer the help. She was the storm coming through the front door. 3 days later, the boardroom at Everly Holdings was unrecognizable. Gone were the champagne flutes and socialite gossip. In their place, tense silence, nervous glances, and folders marked confidential lining the mahogany table. The walls, lined with awards and press clippings, suddenly felt like they belonged to a crumbling empire. At the head sat Charles, sweat beading at his temples despite the air conditioning. He tried to maintain composure, but his eyes betrayed panic. Then, the glass doors opened, and in walked Celeste. She wasn't in a nanny's uniform. Today, she wore a tailored navy suit, sharp as a scalpel. Her afro crowned her head with defiance. Behind her was Marcus, who carried a leather portfolio and the weight of finality. Several board members looked stunned. Others whispered. I believe you all received the documents I submitted, Marcus said, taking his place beside Celeste. Yes, said Mrs. Rourke, CFO. We thought they were fake. They're not, Celeste said calmly. That will, signed by Richard Everly, names my son, Evan Dawes Everly, as rightful heir to the trust. That same trust Charles has been enjoying. One board member cleared his throat. This is highly irregular. Is it? Marcus interrupted. Because I'd say what's highly irregular is kidnapping, forgery, and identity fraud. Crimes your CEO committed. Charles stood. This is a personal vendetta. None of this belongs. In a board meeting, Celeste turned to him, her voice like ice. You made it corporate when you used company resources to cover your tracks. That's misappropriation. That's embezzlement. That belongs here. Silence. The board began to shift. Mrs. Rourke leaned forward. If what you're saying is true, we're exposed. Pierce, the lawyer, entered just then, carrying a thick file. And I have the evidence to prove every word. Charles collapsed into his chair, cornered. Celeste stared him down. You tried to bury me. You tried to raise my child under glass, pretending I was just the help. But the truth doesn't rot underground. It grows. It erupts. And now, it's here. Rourke looked at her peers, then at Celeste. What exactly are you asking for? Celeste held her breath, and then she said, I want full custodial rights, a public apology, and your resignation. Later that evening, the Everly estate felt like a mausoleum, cold, hollow. Evelyn sat in her ornate dressing room, staring blankly at her. Reflection. Her once flawless makeup was smudged. Her pearls lay scattered on the floor. The photo from the envelope sat beside her. Proof. Damning proof. From the hallway, she heard Charles on the phone, his voice desperate, begging a PR firm to control the narrative. But it was too late. The headlines had already begun spreading. Everly heiress exposed. Birth mother files for custody in corporate scandal. Evelyn picked up the photo, then threw it at the mirror. Glass shattered. She screamed. "You stupid, stupid man," she hissed to herself. "You said she'd never find out. You said we'd be safe." For years, she had convinced herself she was Evan's mother. She'd sung him lullabies, read him bedtime stories. But there had always been a wall she couldn't break through, a softness in him reserved for Celeste, a gravitational pull she could never fight off. She now knew why. She tried to steady her breath, but the past clawed at her. The clinic, the deal, the moment she signed that falsified birth certificate, a knock at the door. It was Evan, small, unsure. "Mrs. Evelyn," he said quietly. "Can I see Celeste now?" She froze. Not Mommy, not even Mom. Just Evelyn. She nodded, silent. The boy turned, disappearing down the hallway. The sound of his little shoes against the marble floor was louder than any scream. Evelyn sank to her knees. Her foundation cracked. Her identity crumbled. And then, the final blow. Her phone lit up. A message from the Everly Holdings Board. "Effective immediately. Charles Everly is suspended pending investigation. Will be contacting legal counsel for custodial review." She stared at it, mouth open. Power. Gone. Everything she fought to preserve, built on lies, was now slipping through her fingers like sand. Then another message appeared. This one from Celeste. It was just one line. "Tell him the truth, or I will." The press conference was hastily arranged, but the cameras were already rolling before the Everlys even stepped up to the podium. Celeste sat quietly in the front row, Marcus at her side, while the board members lingered behind a velvet rope, whispering with unease. Journalists jostled for position, microphones aimed at the mic stand like weapons. Then Charles appeared, flanked by Evelyn. He looked like a man unraveling, tie askew, eyes hollow. Evelyn, once poised and perfect, looked worn thin. Makeup couldn't cover the truth anymore. Charles adjusted the microphone. He cleared his throat. "I want to begin by acknowledging the pain I've caused." His voice cracked. "I was a coward. Years ago, I made a decision to hide a truth that didn't belong to me. I took a child from his mother and constructed a lie to protect myself and my legacy. That child is my son, and his real mother, Celeste Dawes, was deceived and manipulated into silence." A wave of gasps. Celeste inhaled sharply, eyes stinging. Evan sat beside her, his little hand resting on her wrist. He didn't fully understand the cameras, the crowd, but he understood her tears. Charles continued, voice quieter now. "I made Evelyn complicit. I convinced her it was the only way to have a family, but the truth is, Celeste was family all along." Evelyn blinked, fighting back her own tears. She stepped up. "I raised Evan believing he was mine. I loved him as fiercely as any mother could. But I also saw the way he looked at her, Celeste. I never admitted it, but I saw the bond, the truth. And I buried it, like Charles did," turned to Celeste. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I am sorry from the deepest part of me." Cameras flashed wildly. Celeste stood slowly. She took a deep breath. Evan deserves his full truth, his whole truth. Not shame, not shadows. "I'm not here to destroy anyone. I'm here to reclaim what was stolen, and to raise my son without lies." The applause was hesitant at first, then steady, then thunderous. And in the chaos of the press and the flash of lights, Evan reached up, wrapped his arms around Celeste's waist and whispered, "Can we go home now, Mommy?" She nodded, tears falling freely. "Yeah, baby. Let's go home." The Everly mansion stood quiet, emptier than ever. For sale signs dotted the lawn. Inside, furniture was wrapped in plastic, paintings boxed up. The house no longer pulsed with prestige. It sighed with defeat. In a quiet office across the city, Celeste sat at a glass desk in Everly Holdings' downtown skyscraper, her name now on the door. Celeste Dawes, special advisor to the board. Equity and Ethics Division. She didn't ask for power, but they gave it to her, because when the truth surfaced, so did the public. And for once, people listened, A nonprofit had already pledged support to mothers separated by medical fraud. Celeste had started a foundation in Evan's name. She called it Born Seen. Evan now thrived in a home full of warmth, clarity, and love. He saw Evelyn sometimes, on weekends, under supervision, not out of obligation, but because he chose to. And to Celeste's surprise, Evelyn softened, piece by piece. The mask finally dropped, and a wounded woman stood where the marble figure once was. Charles. He faced a federal investigation for conspiracy and fraud, stripped of his title, legacy, and board seat. His name would never again command the respect it once had. And Marcus? He smiled as he handed Celeste a fresh envelope one morning, this time one she had asked for. Inside was an official court order, full legal custody awarded to Celeste Dawes. She looked out the window, the city stretching far beneath her. For years, she thought her voice didn't matter. That being a black woman meant being invisible, replaceable, silenced. But now, her voice had shaken a tower, and she had done it with dignity, with truth. Evan burst into the room, backpack bouncing. "Mommy, I got a gold star in writing today." She stood and opened her arms. "Of course you did. You're made of stars." He ran to her. They embraced. And for a long moment, the world outside faded away. This was the justice she never imagined. Not revenge, not fame, but restoration. Truth. A future. A son who knew who he belonged to. Celeste kissed his forehead and whispered, "We're just getting started, baby." And this time no one would silence her again.